All right, welcome back. The expected announcement about increases in tax during the upcoming national budget speech will possibly tighten the belts around our waists and the waists of those small and medium enterprises as well, those owners in South Africa. Bierman, the Managing Director of the Business Partners Limited, a local risk financier of the SME, says despite the expected tax increases, there's still hope for growth among smaller businesses. He says that political stability will contribute to progression for SME owners. Ben joins us in studio now to talk a little bit about the possibility of growth for small and medium enterprises. Good to have you in studio.
Good morning, Leah.
Thanks for being our guest. Morning to you. I want to begin with the political stability because that, I think, is on the top of everybody's mind, and then we'll start digging into the details. You know, again, we've got our finance minister about to take to Parliament this week and deliver the budget, and again it's against the backdrop of uncertainty and perhaps some political turmoil against him. Do you think this affects everything when it comes to the minister and his way of thinking?
I think his way of thinking has been defined and outlined in terms of what he needs to do in terms of the budget speech, but I think what we are rightly pointing out is that anything that increases the uncertainty in the economy, that increases or takes away the focus from getting our economy growing again, I think that's negative.
Yeah.
And as long as all these moves or political shenanigans do not detract from the importance of getting the economy growing again, I think Pravin Gordhan, our minister, is admired all around the world as being a sound and prudent financial minister. And I think his budget speech is already defined in terms of the austerity measures that he might be laying out for us for the next year.
Yeah. So let's have a look at your view when it comes to pro-growth existing for these SME owners, although tax increases are expected. How do you balance that? Why do you think this?
I think the tax increases that we expect for during this budget speech will tax the wealthy. It will probably increase the marginal tax rate for individuals. But I think within the broader budget narrative, one would probably hope to see some initiatives that are focused on increasing the scope and the attractiveness of small business formation, and to ensure that small businesses continue to thrive. They are so vital for economic growth. Once you get the economy going, I think we're expecting 1.5% growth this year. But if the SME sector itself can also get some attention and the funding gets increased to maybe the Small Business Development Ministry, then I think we can have a better environment for SMEs to contribute to the South African growth.
Yeah. So hoping for some tax relief for SMEs, is that what your, I suppose, wish list, and I imagine SMEs feel the same way?
I think it's ironic to ask for tax relief in a context of seeing that the government revenues are under pressure, but we know that there's a very neat set of tax regulations that addresses the needs and requirements of SMEs. For instance, the small business corporation tax, which makes it easier and provides a lower effective tax rate. We hope that they could potentially look at providing some more relief there by increasing the threshold levels. But there's also another turnover tax that they actually apply to very small organizations. And if those limits can be increased, it again, as I mentioned, just makes it more attractive for people to start businesses and to ensure that they have a better chance of survival.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. I mean, I think that Minister Gordhan's he's got a massive balancing act that he has to achieve during this. I mean, it's the task of raising taxes and cutting expenditure without compromising growth, and
very
is,
difficult.
you know, that's that fine balancing act. But I want to get back to one of the heaviest compliances for SME owners, and that's VAT. You find that VAT needs to be paid on the receiving of an invoice. And I can imagine this, with a possible increase of VAT on the cards, this is going to influence and be a bit of a heavy burden on SMEs as well. Talk to us about the influence, and do you see any negativity or perhaps positivity coming out of this?
I think we need to remember, Leanne, that back in the 90s we actually had a VAT dispensation where you could only pay your VAT as a supplier across to the receiver once you've received payments from your client. So you sell something to your client, and once your client pays you, you were then obligated to pay the VAT across to the receiver. The current legislation requires the SME to pay the VAT across to the receiver as soon as he makes the sale. It might take him 60, 90 days before he receives the payment back from his client that he sold the goods or services to. And that often creates a very big drain on their cash flow. And we've seen that SMEs can actually not sustain that funding of the fiscus until they get the client. Sometimes the client doesn't even pay them at all. And that's where we hope that there could be, in the final legislation, some relief to ensure that SMEs can perhaps move back with better oversight and better controls. They can move back again to maybe pay their VAT on receipt of the payment from their clients. I think that will make a huge difference to some of the smaller SMEs. Yes.
Yeah, so many people questioning the Department of Small Business and SMEs and the Enterprise Development Agency, the Small Business Finance Agency, the Industrial Development Corporation. Are they assisting SMEs? Do you find that they're making a difference?
I think if one looks across the spectrum, there are fantastic initiatives being undertaken by all the different agencies that you just mentioned. I think what I would argue is that there should be a much better coordinated effort, and that we've got to remember that the Small Business Ministry has only been around for, I think, 2 or 3 years. There's been some really good initiatives, but I think what's important looking forward is that there should be closer cooperation, as we all know, between government and private sector to ensure that we can really get our economic engine going. So what I would argue is that as long as we can have an orchestrated and coordinated policy response, that should benefit all the SMEs.
Ben, just finally, some advice now for SME owners at a time like this. It is difficult times. There is a lot of uncertainty out there. We're perhaps going to hear something when it comes to Wednesday's budget in terms of relief. But what do you advise them?
SME owners are fantastic people. They are incredibly confident and optimistic, and we've seen recently that there's a general upswell in confidence level. So our advice to them would be just look out for the opportunities that you might have in your small market space and believe in the future. I think if we don't commit to South Africa's future, it's going to become a self-fulfilling prophecy. So as long as everybody takes the positive sentiment that we've seen the first 2 or 3 months, we know that economic growth is going to be increasing. The weather doesn't look too bad, but at least it's raining. And all of those factors contribute, I think, to a better and a more positive and a conducive environment for growth. Good.
Ben, thanks for talking to us here on the program. Ben Bierman is the Managing Director of the Business Partners Limited, talking to us about SMEs, and despite that possible increase in tax, we're hoping that SME owners still have hope of growing in this economic climate when Pravin Gordhan, our Finance Minister, announces the budget speech on Wednesday, which of course we will be following. We'll be there in Cape Town on Wednesday, and then of course on Thursday we'll be dissecting that budget for you. So that's what to expect this week. Let's take a break. We'll have some news for you after this. Stay tuned.